Try again. I'm used to Zoom that pretty much automatically records, but not this one. So besides the skin, of course, there's the hair that is embedded in the skin layers, and that has, of course, accessory glands that go along with it, and then nails. We won't be talking about nails because the skin or integumentary model that we're asking you to learn structures on is just the skin and the hair, so nails is not something we'll discuss. That's something we'll just leave for lecture. But it is part of the integumentary system. So we're focusing on the skin portion and the accessory parts of that. We all know the skin's there to protect us. It helps regulate internal temperature, so we'll describe that a little bit more detail. But the layers each have just a function that relates to being protective. Of course, the outer layer is more protective than the inner layers. Those are the more growing ones. But there are 3 layers. Well, depending on what textbook you read, some books do not include hypodermis as a true skin layer. It's more of a supplemental accessory, but still, for our purposes, you need to know all 3 of these names. And there are extra smaller parts in each of these layers, which we'll talk about as we go on. But in general, the 3 major categories are the epidermis, epi meaning outside, and dermis is just the term that refers to the skin. So that's the most protective layer. Then you have the dermis layer, which is the living, bringing in blood, nutrients kind of layer. And then the hypodermis, which is mostly just fat, which adds as a cushion kind of protective layer, but also helps that temperature regulation. So by all means, you guys have a microphone. Yell out if you have any concerns. The key words as far as the anatomy, which goes along with that skin model that's posted on Blackboard in Lab 3, is what we need you guys to know. The rest of the physiology stuff is just to kind of help make the stuff make sense, so you're not just memorizing parts without having some vague idea what they do. So the epidermis, depending on if you're in your hand or the rest of the hands, soles of your feet, or the rest of your body, there is a number of layers. There's one additional layer that is just in your hands and your feet. That's thinner tissue, but actually has more layers. They're just not as thick each layer. So the outside layer is stratum corneum. And there are mnemonics for these if you like mnemonics, going from outside in. And I can share the one that I learned when I was in school if it helps or not. My biggest thing is getting rid of that layer that's not on our skin model, though, which is the L. Stratum, of course, is repeated. But corneum, if you think about corn, I mean, not maybe the vegetable, but just, or unless it's like dried, it's just cornified, means it's kind of tough. It's dead, it's keratinized, so it actually hardens it. So yes, we try to keep our outside layer of our skin supple. We don't want it super crusty, but in comparison to the lower layers, it is tougher and drier than the other layers. So it's cornified, which gives it that protective nature and also keeps things out and waterproofs it. So it functions greatly for what it is. If we didn't have skin, we would be open to bacteria and we would die within days. So our skin's very important. So stratum basal is the bottom layer. So top and bottom. And we'll go through some of the middle ones here in a minute. But the middle ones are kind of transitional layers. The stratum basal is that bottom layer where actually the new cells are developing. So that dermis layer brings the blood and the nutrients to this layer so that it has the ability to actually produce new cells. And then the middle ones are kind of transitional ones. So the Langerhans cells, which are not on our model, is immunity, and then the melanocytes, so pigments, all come from those lower levels. So within the dermis, this is, as you can see by the picture here, it's much thicker. It's got a lot of these supplemental accessory glands in it. It's got the blood vessels to bring in the nutrients. It's got our sensory organs in it, our nerves. It's got the sebaceous glands, which are the oil glands, and then our sweat glands are also in here, and the hair follicles. It's got that collagen and elastic fibers, which we learned about when we were doing the tissues last week, which helps give it its strength and flexibility. And then this dermal papilla layer, which is this kind of wavy layer here, which is the top layer, is actually what gives us this kind of texture in our skin. So in this case, they talk about the fact it's why you have a fingerprint, because it's that kind of in and out kind of waviness. And the waviness is very unique to every person. It's a genetic thing. Then the hypodermis, which sometimes you'll also see it called the subcutaneous layer. Hypo being bottom or lower, below stuff. That's the deepest layer, and it's pretty much all adipose. There are some other cells in there. And of course, if you can see by this picture, there's a good source of blood coming in there also. So it's fat as an energy source, fat as an insulator, and fat as acts as protective padding for all the other muscles and other tissues below it. So it looks like it doesn't really have a whole lot of function, but it does a whole lot considering. Just has a whole lot of extra stuff in there, if you will. So our main functions of the skin, and pretty much by looking at or figuring out the things that we just discussed, you can pretty much come up with the functions it has based on what's housed in here and what they do. But the first one, of course, is protective. Keeps out dirt, diseases. It protects us from UV radiation, which is why we get tan. That's our body's way of saying ouch, but we do it nowadays because people think it's attractive to be tan. It's your body's response to try to protect your other organs and your rest of your body. Bacteria can get in. That's why, unfortunately, if we get cuts or scrapes in the skin, then it gives it an entry point for diseases. We need our skin to have some oil to it. I mean, we wash it off on a regular basis because it gets to be too much, but that's what helps protect that layer also, is that sebum, which comes from those sebaceous glands, which are these, in this cartoon picture here, it's these little ones here. Whoops, go back. That are associated with the hair follicle because the oil comes out through those follicles. Regulates water loss. Yes, we sweat. So we do get rid of excess. It's excess. Unfortunately, it's not always excess. It is sometimes if we have excess water. And waste. Yeah, if you think about it, when you accidentally get sweat in your mouth, it does have waste products that are somewhat similar to urine. Not exactly. It's got some nitrogen-based products, but it's not quite the same makeup, so you're not like drinking urine, but still it does have waste in there. So if you kind of think about that when sweat gets in your mouth, it can be kind of gross, but it's mostly salts and water are the main things that are produced through our sweat. And there are some oils which makes up some of that material that allows the bacteria to make us stink. The sweat itself is not actually what's smelly. It's the bacteria on our skin that's actually converting those nutrients, those nitrogen products into that stank. So the keratinization of the outside layer helps protect us from too much water loss, because then we'll get dehydrated, of course, and die. But so the water is coming in and out through those little pores, all the little holes in our skin, which generally have a hair coming out of it on most of our bodies. Even it may be small, but pretty much every pore has a little hair coming out of it. So vitamin D has a lot of talk about the fact that we now wear sunscreen, and so that's why a lot of us that don't spend enough time outside or wear sunscreen, which is good. I advocate for that. Vitamin D can easily be eaten through diet, so I would rather somebody eat the vitamin D than go out and get a lot of sun, and of course then get high risk for things like skin cancer. So there's a balance there, because those UV radiation is bad, but UV also is what helps us produce and create that vitamin D, which is needed for uptake and usage of calcium, which then we need for strong bones. So, it's one of those catch-22s here. But during a high UV day, which in Alabama is pretty much 9 months or so out of the year, it can take as little as 20 minutes of sun exposure to get your amount of vitamin D in a day. Those with darker skin tones usually requires longer periods of time. I burn real easy and I'm very pasty white, so it probably wouldn't take very long for me. But if you have a natural amount of those melanocytes, or you have a darker skin tone, that helps repel the UV radiation, which is great for keeping you from getting harmed by those rays, but it does slow down the amount of time it takes for vitamin D to be produced. So then you would have to stay out longer for that. Sensory. So on the skin model we'll look at here in a minute, we have two kind of ones that are the key ones that we're going to ask you to know that have to do with sensory. You have your tactile corpuscles and your lamellar corpuscles. Tactile also are known as Merkel. And we are trying to get away from some of the scientists' name, and I think it's Meissner. I've been so out of that using scientist name for a long time, I can't even remember what their old terms are anymore. But tactile, they renamed it so it's easier to understand what it does. So tactile is that gentle ones closer to the surface, and I'll show you a picture here in a second. So when somebody just gently touches your skin, you can feel it, and so you can respond to it. And then the deeper ones, which are those lamellar corpuscles, they're further down and they require more pressure to actually feel them, because those are the ones that are actually figuring out, responding to deep pressure. There are nerves, so of course we feel pain, and then temperature receptors that are in there also. So this goofy guy on the picture here is kind of hard to look at, but the whole point of this is that the bigger that the body part is on this picture, the more sensory receptors they have. So your hands, your lips, your tongue, your mouth, your genitals generally have more receptors than other areas in your body. It's also a reason why our fingertips and our soles of feet don't have hair. So these are just showing you in general. We'll have specific names for these light touch and heavy pressure sensors. So there's another picture that will show this. But for your guys' purposes, these are what we are calling the tactile corpuscles. Corpuscle just means basically circular structure. And then the heavy pressure ones, which are deeper down here at the bottom of the dermis, are our lamellar corpuscles. But then there are nerve sensory here that's just hot, cold, pain, which it's not on our model, so we're not asking you to know it. And then there's also ones that help deal with heat. Those are all nervous. All the white stuff relates to the nervous system. So the corpuscles are actually extensions of the nervous system. And the last thing is body temperature. Our muscles are what create most of the heat in our body. So the conversion of energy while we're exercising is what makes heat. It's an extra product, a byproduct of metabolism and of ATP conversion, which is good. We're animals that are not environmentally controlled, so we're not exotherms, we're endotherms. So this is how we create heat, but we can get too hot. So our skin helps regulate that temperature. And I'm sure that you guys are aware of the main way that the skin helps with that is sweat, or for our purposes, we call them the sudoriferous glands. And then also dilating your blood vessels. Constrict your blood vessels when it's cold, conserve heat, dilate them, bring more blood to the surface, which allows the heat to leave the blood and go out into the air. That works as long as the air temperature is less than your body temperature, which is generally true, but we're getting to the point right now where outside is about as hot as our insides, which makes it way harder to regulate your temperature. So if you get too cold, I'm sure you're aware that the point of shivering is your muscles are contracting, and so muscle contraction creates heat. Goosebumps. So one of the structures we ask you to know is this erector, which I spelled it wrong, papillae muscles. So they lift your hair up to help trap in heat. We are generally, especially women, we have little hairs even as men, but they're not as thick as animals. So it's kind of an evolutionary thing that's still around that doesn't really serve us a whole lot of purpose. But in theory, the whole point is that when the hair stands up, it makes things a little denser and keeps the heat from being able to escape as easily. Decreases that surface area that the heat can go through. So this person's hair is standing up pretty good. It might help them a little bit. For the most part, it's not going to be very successful. And then as I mentioned, yeah, if you change your blood vessels, constrict if you're cold. So the smaller the blood vessels, the less heat that's going to be exposed to the surface and be removed. More, and then you can get it out to the hot or whatever external environment that's hopefully not hotter than your body temperature. So that's just a briefly to go through kind of the functions and the basic stuff here. So this is what you actually have to learn. This key down here at the bottom is in the lab handout for the day. I will try to pull up Blackboard. I have trouble sometimes switching between pages, so I will hopefully get it to come up. And you will see that there are different layers. So the epidermis, we talked about the stratum corneum and the stratum basal. Those are the dead and dying cells and the new birth cells. And then as they move up, they become more keratinized until they completely keratinized on the outside here. So I skipped through these middle layers because they're kind of intermediaries, and you'll get that in way great detail in lecture. But if you have trouble learning the order here, of course you have to get rid of the word stratum, but there are a ton of mnemonics. Unfortunately, there is another layer that for the mnemonic that I have in my head. I'm trying to figure out if I can change it to get rid of the L for it. But the one I learned was Camille likes going swimming bare naked, but that has the L in it. So I'm sure there's one that removes that L from there, but you can come up with a mnemonic if that helps you. Or kind of, if you look at their names, you might be able to do them also. The biggest thing is corneum and cornified outside, and the basal at the base. But the granulosum and the spinosum may be a little harder to do just based on their names. And then you've got the dermis, which has two layers. So the dermis has the papillary layer and the reticular layer. So the papillary is smaller, a little denser in blood vessels, but it's the one that has that dermal papillae. It's that wavy, which makes that texture on our skin. And the reticular layer is the one that houses pretty much all the sweat glands, the oil glands, that kind of stuff. Sebaceous and sudoriferous glands. Whoops. So let's go through the top and work our way down. So you have your stratum corneum, your stratum granulosum, your stratum spinosum, and then the wavy bottom layer is the stratum basal. That's all housed within the generalized layer, which is the epidermis. And then two here is all the dermis. The dermis is divided into that papillary layer, which has that dermal papillae, Then you have your reticular layer. Then inside your dermis here, this is your hair. So your hair shaft is the part that's done growing, just being pushed out. And then the root is the base that's still growing. And then the main thing in between there is the whole hair follicle. Attached to that is that muscle, which causes the hair to stand up, which is the erecti pili. So erector means to lift up, to make erect. So hopefully that's not too bad as far as names go. Then associated with the hair follicle is your oil gland. So sebum is the scientific word for oil. So it's sebaceous gland. This is just a cut through over here. It's the same thing. You're just looking at it in more detail in the inside. And then these are our sweat glands coming over here. There are different types of sweat glands. We're not asking you to know the different sudoriferous glands. You've got one that goes in here towards the follicle, hair follicle, or the pore. And then there's another one here that goes towards the pore. So those are our sweat glands. And then we have our nervous system. So we've got our tactile corpuscles, which are the little ones that just do the light touch. So they're all along the surface. So they're responding to just gentle insect lands on you kind of touch. And then inside this bottom layer here, which is the hypodermis has the deep pressure sensing corpuscles, which are the lamellar corpuscles. Much bigger, deeper in. They're really feeling when you're getting pushed on or hit on. And then the yellow, pretty much on all the models, you always see adipose as this kind of chunky yellow stuff. So hopefully it shouldn't be that bad. Compared to I'm not gonna lie, every other week or every other quote lab, you're gonna have to learn new material. This is the least you're gonna have out of any weeks. So hopefully it'll give you a slight downtime considering we have our first mini exam. Mini just because it's half the amount of points. I call it a mini exam. It probably should be considered a large quiz, but it doesn't really matter. It's 50 points, 2 points apiece for the questions. So the exam questions are going to be weighted heavier because we're hoping by now you will know them, and it makes the other quizzes a little less of a commitment. That's not the word I'm looking for, but not as heavily weighted so that you can still learn and make mistakes there and it won't hurt your grade severely. But then the exams, we're hoping you know it well enough and we're really going to make the points worth it then. But that's it for today. There's not a whole lot. I'm going to shut this off and I'm going to try to share with you Blackboard and Visible Body just to show you that stuff. So if you have any questions, call it out while I'm working on this. So this is, I probably should have pulled a Blackboard for first, but this is the handout for today. So these are all the terms that go along with that picture. That skin model, integumentary model picture is on Blackboard. So the key here is the red, or we're going to start tagging. I mentioned this in some of the sessions last week. I think it was you, Shalom, that asked about some of the tagging stuff. Somebody did. I apologize. I don't remember names between lab periods. I just remember some of the people that asked questions, but not who asked what questions. But I'll go through Visible Body and show you the tagging again. But the ones in red are the ones, which is most everything, that I want you to tag. And that you'll tag those. All you have to do is find them, add a tag. It's simple, easy, 5 points. It gets you some practice with Visible Body, helps reinforce some of the material, so it shouldn't be hard and easy points. It just is something you have to do. So like normal, I'm hoping that as soon as you exit here, like we're continuing with lab if we were face-to-face, that you will go and do the Quizlet. We've had A few people get zeros last week because they didn't do them. So please, I would love for you guys to set aside the time right now after these sessions to go and do Quizlet so you can get it out of the way. But it is due tomorrow at midnight. And then the tagging, the pictures is not due until Friday. So let me see if I can stop sharing this. Am I not sharing? I thought I was sharing. Why am I not? Why is it not saying sharing? What are you guys seeing? You're not seeing anything. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, I don't even know if you can hear me. My computer is frozen currently, so I may have lost connection. Ah, I keep forgetting that it turns off my mic automatically. So I'm gonna go back. We'll get this. This is the problem about Blackboard crashing on me, is that I had to start over on this. It's okay, it is recording again too, so it's gonna be like two little pieces for anybody who watches this video. Let me go back again. So this is the lab handouts. We'll get this. We'll get this. Blackboard is giving me fits today. So this tells you what we're trying to get you to accomplish today. So I will talk about the tagging and visible body here, but all the terms in red are the things I want you to tag, which is pretty much everything. I just got rid of some of the quote easier stuff. The tactile corpuscles will come up. I didn't do lamellar corpuscles because it doesn't, visible body doesn't use this newer term. But we'll go through and we'll tag those, and I'll just show you those real quick here. So visible body. The other thing is Quizlet. So please, I highly recommend you assign yourself an hour right now. It shouldn't even take you an hour. It's like 20 things. To go do Quizlet and get it over with, because we've had a few people get zeros this past week because they didn't do the Quizlets. And that should be easy 5 points. I know it takes time to do it, but you can do it as many times and as small of chunks as you want. But this skin one is due, the Quizlet is due on Tuesday. We are working towards our mini exam, which is the end of this week. So please be aware that that's 2 points apiece, 25 questions over all the terminology, bone markings, tissues and their related structures and functions, and then the skin model. It'll be out of the way and we'll move on, and only just brief kind of terminology stuff will come back moving forward, but the rest of it will not be directly quizzed on or have an exam on again, because our quizzes and exams aren't cumulative. So now let me see if I can try visible body again. I think I have not gone through and double checked to see if there's anybody that has not gotten on visible body. I will go through that and send out emails if somebody is missing on visible body, but you should see something vaguely like this. And these two folders just had helpful stuff if it worked for you. So now officially, what we're asking you to do for a grade is this visible body quiz. I would highly recommend you practice with the visible body program first before you take that quiz. So to do that, you go into your apps. The skin and pretty much most of our stuff will be in the Human Anatomy Atlas. The reason why I said I'm hoping this won't crash is this is a big program. It's colorful, gigantic pictures, so of course that means a lot of memory and a lot of internet speed. There is a link on visible body. Okay, let me double check that it actually followed me. Did it follow me? Good, it followed me. That goes to the skin stuff, but I showed you last week that for me, the easiest thing to do is search for it. So the highlighted, and you can zoom in, and of course, rotate and flip. But when you click on something up here, you have add a tag. So you can either go through and find all the stuff that's listed and tag it, like you click on it because you know where it is, or if you can't find something, you can always use the search option. So you got your Meissner corpuscle, which I thought it said in parentheses tactile, but remember, I think when you search it, I'll tell you that, but it's corpusculum tactilis, so it's the tactile corpuscles. So then you would add a tag. Then you would go and click on the sebaceous gland, and you add a tag. Click on the layers and add your tags. Once you get all the tags on here, I'm not going to do all of them. All you have to do is go download image. It's downloaded it. So you just go to your downloads, rename that file with your name, last name first, because that's where the Blackboard gradebook is, everything is last name first. So it's easier to sort if you save it with your last name. Then your first name, and then just put skin tagging or skin or something, so I know it's this one. And it'll be uploaded on Blackboard. So now let me see if I can get to Blackboard. So I'm trying to house everything I possibly can for each lab in their own folder so you don't have to go searching for it. So that lab handout is here. That skin model picture and the key is here. The video that I made of me jibber jabbering about the skin model is here if that's helpful for you. A reminder to do the Quizlets. It won't go directly to the skin or integumentary Quizlet. I can't do that. You have to log in to access anything. Same thing with visible body. It'll take you to the login. And so you have to know what to do once you get there, because I can't bypass logins. And this is where you're going to upload that skin picture. You just go in here, you browse your computer for the file, and you submit it. And then submit. Tagging those things should take 5 minutes if you know what you're doing, 10 maybe if you don't. And it's easy 5 points. Mostly it's just to make sure you actually use visible body and you practiced it. And I showed you that. I can go back if you want me to, but I showed you that visible body quiz. So you pull it up and it's just going to look exactly like that Human Anatomy Atlas picture was. You rotate it and you go through, and visible body is basically, it's matching, you finding it. You just go, it'll ask you for something and you just have to go click on it. So you don't have to spell anything correctly, you don't have to type anything in, you just have to be able to locate it. So Quizlets is more like, well, we want you to know, but visible body is good practice because it's got more three-dimensional effects to it that we can't do with just pictures. And that's all the stuff that's on that mini exam, and that's all the stuff that we're working on today. The skull is a lot of stuff. So if you feel comfortable with lab 1, 2, and 3's material, feel free to move on. I have added all the Quizlets up through the end of bones. If you want to work ahead, visible body has all the assignments posted on there through the end of the semester. So you can always work ahead on visible body. Blackboard quizzes, you can't work ahead. Those will only be posted 2 or 3 days before that due date on Sunday. So those you can't work ahead on, but everything else you're free to work ahead on. The problem right now is I will try to get the lab handouts posted. If I open up the folders, just be aware that some of the material is still being created, so will be added slowly, but I can do the lab handouts for you guys if you want that, or I can even make a lab handout for between now and the midterm as one big file and post it someplace else. That's up to you guys. But the problem is I'm trying to keep those folder closed until all the material is added in there, because I don't want you guys to forget to do things because I hadn't added it yet. But if some of you guys want to work ahead, let me know and I'll put them in there. I'm just with the caveat that those folders are not complete probably until the week of that material. So I have the list of words for the skull, so I will try to post that. My goal is to get that folder finished, but I'm trying to videotape the skull, and I haven't had time to do that. So that's my goal, to do it today or tomorrow so that there's a video. But everything else I have, it's just those videos I'm behind on getting. They're just time consuming to do. Is there any other questions? Are we feeling somewhat comfortable? I also wanted to warn you, and I'll send you an email, that I am concerned that during these meetups that people are not really staying on that they are walking away from their device and not paying attention to me, which, I mean, you can, just to try to remedy some of that, I am going to start taking attendance randomly in the middle of my talks. So if you're here and listening to me, then there's no reason why you shouldn't get credit for being here. But I unfortunately was told that there are people that are not actually listening. They're just walking away and just logging in and then disappearing. So unfortunately, we always have to kind of balance that. But otherwise, if there's not any other questions, you guys are, whoops, I see a chat. See, that's the problem about, oh, that was you couldn't hear me because when Blackboard crashed on me and I reloaded. But that's, I mean, not too much to do. The scan and integumentary is really our easiest day of material ever. So there's not much to talk about if you guys don't have any questions. Play with visible body. Tagging is not due until later in the week. So if you can't figure out visible body, when we meet up on Wednesday or Thursday, we can discuss it again. Or if you really have a problem and you want to talk to me where I can actually show you stuff, you can always come in tomorrow on the meetup at 1 o'clock and just ask that question. And if you're already been today, you don't have to stay put. You can always just bail to get a question asked. I do not get to all my emails on the weekend, so I am working on those. So if you sent me questions about the Blackboard quiz, I will answer that as soon as I can. But I please to try to limit the number of emails that I got, which I already know I got at least 7 in the last couple days, which is not a ton, but it's more than I would like to have to spend time on. Is remember I mentioned last week that all the quizzes and exams on Blackboard will be regraded. So I will look for anything that I can give you credit for. So please don't email me and say, can you look at my quiz score, until you at least give me 3 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, ideally through Friday, to go back and regrade those. And then if you don't feel your score came up and there's something in there you want to defend yourself on, then by all means, feel free to email me. But I will get to regrading those as soon as I can. I can't just do them just because you send me an email. I've got other things like content and stuff I have to build first. So I promise you, I will look at them with a very open mind to be able to give you points where I can give you points. But the other thing that I have a note to remind you is the lab handout. The words in there are the words I want you to know. Please don't find other reference sources that call it random things that I may not know, and then tell me that, hey, but this book said, this is why I have the lab handout. The terms that are on the lab handout are the words I expect you to relay back to me when those questions are asked. Quizlet, I can't word everything on Quizlet exactly the same as I'm always going to do it on Blackboard, so please watch for terms like structure. That's a key one. On the bones, let's see, it's going to be things like structure, it's going to be bone, it's going to be suture. For the skin model, it will be whole layer, specific layer, because unfortunately stratum corneum is a layer, but so is the dermis. So I will call the whole thing the dermis, the whole layer the dermis, versus specific layers would be the stratum corneum, the stratum granulosum, those smaller pieces, the papillary layer, the reticular layer. On Blackboard, when we do those quizzes. And then going backwards, I think cavities, regions, those weren't too bad. People didn't have trouble with that. That was pretty self-explanatory. I had some people complain about the bone marking quiz because there were no pictures associated, but those are definitions. I can't put pictures with those. So you just have to memorize the definitions. So for those, I highly recommend flashcards, which normally in this class, flashcards don't work. But for definitions, just flashcards help. Or you can go through the Quizlets and do those like flashcards. And then for the tissues, remember that there are 4 types of tissues: connective, nervous, epithelial, and then muscle tissue. Those are the types of tissues. But then the tissues have their own names. So the tissue name would be like blood, bone, hyaline cartilage. But if I ask you for the tissue name and its type, you have to add hyaline cartilage connective on there. So you have to have all three of the words. Blackboard is designed where you should be able to not do them in that exact order and it would pick it up, but it does glitch occasionally, which is where me regrading comes in. Then on those, location, do the best to do the one that's on the handout. If you word it slightly different, Blackboard won't pick it up, but I will when I regrade. And what's the last one? Oh, structures. So anything smaller within the tissues are the structures. So the nucleus, the elastic fibers, collagen fibers. I try to have Blackboard set so that it will do both singular and plural, but I may not always catch it. So if possible, try to watch. If it's pointing to one, please do the singular. If it's pointing to multiple, do the plural. But I will catch the plural singular issue when we go back and I regrade. Similar with the bold print / parentheses for the body regions. I put both of those in there, but if there's one that missed or the ending was slightly different and I didn't catch it when I put it into the answer key, I will get it when I go back and I regrade. So Blackboard is a black and white thing, so I can't fix it. But best I can do is that I will go back and look for extra points. You just have to give me some time to do it. Anything that I not cover? 25 questions. You'll get 50 minutes for the mini exam. It will open up on Thursday at midnight. Let me see if I can pull up the syllabus here. It's listed on there. I will try making it so that it won't be invisible. So the mini exam will be posted above Lab 1 at the top of the course content page. Instead of like the quizzes, I will stick in the different folders. So there was 2 quizzes for last Sunday, each one, but the announcements will always list tests. The quizzes are also called tests when they post it, but it will have a link to which folder it's in. In this case, for the mini exam, because it covers 3 folders, I'm not going to stick it in a folder. I'll just cram it at the top of course content, but there will be an announcement with a link. So if you have trouble finding it, that announcement hopefully will help. So the mini exam is Blackboard. So Blackboard is always going to be fill in the blank, spelling counts kind of material. So it will be identical to the 2 Blackboard quizzes plus the skin Blackboard quiz if there was one. It's just bigger. So the same pictures, the same kind of questions will be asked. On the mini exam, there was just on those 2 quizzes from yesterday. So those will get combined with the skin and they'll get randomized questions again. So the exams are randomized questions. So you may accidentally get the same question, you may not. But the pictures are going to look, and the arrows and the wording are going to look identical to what you just did on that Blackboard quiz for tissues and for the bone markings and the terminology. So all the Blackboard stuff will always be fill in the blank using Respondus Monitor kind of stuff, which mimics more like if we were doing a face-to-face exam. We need you to be able to recall it and spell it. The other programs are just study tools to help you learn the material. Does that make sense, Sharon? Okay, I'll let you guys go. Have a great day. If there's anything else, you're free to email me. Just it's easier if I can get it out of the way here, because then if it's something that needs a picture or something pulled up, it's faster and easier than me taking a ton of screenshots and trying to send stuff to you guys. So Well, I'll leave you be. So Wednesday, we're going to work on Skull. Skull's not on the mini exam, but we can't just take a day off, I'm afraid. So I know we're throwing new material at you when you're trying to still finish with the first exam. Just there's unfortunately not anything we can do about it. So hopefully it doesn't fuss too much with your head to have new stuff thrown at you while you're still trying to finish taking a quiz or an exam on the old stuff. But Skull is rough. It's a lot of stuff. So I will get that lab handout posted ASAP so that if you guys want to start looking at it and wrap your head around what you have to know to make it a little more digestible. That's why I also, again, I wish I had my calendar in front of me. I'm pretty sure that for the Skull, because of that mini exam, I postponed all the deadlines until Sunday, even the Quizlets, but I may not have done the Quizlets. I can consider it if I didn't do it. Just to give you a few extra days on that. I hate doubling up on Quizlets and Blackboard quizzes on the same day, but let me see. Yeah, no, I have it assigned for due on Thursday, but how about I move that to Sunday? Does that sound okay? And so you'll have to do Quizlets and Blackboard quiz by Sunday. And I'll open up, you'll still have to do visible body and the visible body tagging by Friday, but you should easily have that done. Hopefully, if you get the skin done in the next couple days, that you'll have that done before Friday, so that won't interfere with the lab exam. So I'll open up the first mini exam Thursday at midnight, 12 a.m. in the morning, and I'll close it Friday night at midnight. So it gives you 2 days to take the exam. So hopefully for anybody that has scheduling conflicts, that would give you plenty of time to be able to take it. Okay, I will leave you guys be. I'll shut off the video here.